Lions Nation, I hope you're all having an amazing Thursday morning. I hope your day is off to a great start, filled with good health, peace, and plenty of success. And, of course, I hope the excitement for another Detroit Lions season keeps growing stronger every day. Before we get started, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't joined our community yet, and turn on notifications so you never miss any Lions updates. And I want to see everyone in the comments. Type Go Lions and let me know what city and country you're watching from today. Now, without wasting any time, let's get straight to the news. The biggest story coming out of Detroit right now isn't panic, it's patience. Jahmyr Gibbs was not on the practice field, and naturally that immediately sparked questions among fans. But based on everything happening around the team, there is very little reason to believe this is turning into a major issue. What we're seeing appears to be a classic hold-in situation while contract negotiations continue, and all signs point toward the Lions eventually rewarding one of the most explosive players on their roster with a massive extension. The expectation inside the organization is clear. Detroit knows what Gibbs means to this offense. The player knows his value, and everyone understands that an agreement is expected sooner rather than later. Reports even suggest that a deal could arrive very soon. Considering the current stage of training camp, there simply isn't much benefit in rushing him onto the practice field before everything is finalized. The team is still working through 7-on-7 sessions without full contact, meaning the physical intensity hasn't even reached its highest level yet. From Detroit's perspective, protecting one of the franchise's most valuable offensive weapons while both sides complete a long-term agreement makes perfect sense. This is something we've seen across the NFL countless times. Players approaching major contract extensions often avoid unnecessary injury risks before signing their new deals. Once the contract is completed, they immediately return to football without any lingering concerns. That is exactly why there doesn't seem to be any sense of panic surrounding Gibbs' situation. The expectation remains that he will become one of the highest paid running backs in football, if not the highest paid, before long. The only real mystery is how large the contract will actually be. While Gibbs' absence naturally grabbed the headlines, another unexpected development surfaced with offensive lineman Giovanni Manu. After training camp had already begun, Manu surprisingly landed on the non-football injury list. The timing immediately raised eyebrows because he wasn't previously listed there before practice. There has been no clear explanation regarding what exactly happened, making the situation even more unusual. Unfortunately for Manu, this comes at the worst possible time. He entered training camp already facing an uphill battle to earn a roster spot after Detroit significantly strengthened its offensive line depth during the offseason. Competition across both tackle and interior positions has become much tougher, leaving very little margin for error. Missing valuable practice time only makes that challenge even greater. Even before the injury, Manu's path toward making the final roster looked extremely difficult. The Lions have invested heavily in rebuilding depth across the offensive line, creating competition at nearly every position. Every practice rep matters in this environment, and now Manu loses valuable opportunities to prove he belongs. That's a major setback for a player who was already trying to fight his way into the picture. The offensive line competition itself may actually be one of the most fascinating storylines developing during camp. Juice Scruggs took first-team reps at left guard, something that immediately stood out. Many expected another name to receive that opportunity, especially with Mahogany expected back soon, or players like Ben Bartch or Miles Frazier entering the mix. Instead, it was Scruggs lining up with the starters. That sends a very clear message about how Detroit is approaching these competitions. No position appears to be guaranteed. The coaching staff seems determined to identify the 5 best offensive linemen regardless of draft status, contract value, or previous expectations. If Scruggs proves he's the best option, he'll play. If another player outperforms him, they'll earn the job instead. The focus isn't on reputation, it's on building the strongest offensive line possible before the regular season begins. Once practice shifted onto the field, the offense wasted little time reminding everyone why expectations remain so high entering this season. Jared Goff continued building chemistry with his primary weapons, connecting with Amon-Ra St, Brown, Jameson Williams, and Sam LaPorta throughout 7-on-7 drills. While St. Brown continued looking like the reliable playmaker everyone expects him to be, one receiver completely stole the spotlight. Jameson Williams delivered arguably the most impressive play of practice with a spectacular contested catch on a deep ball that traveled roughly 40 yards downfield. According to observations from practice, it was a catch many believed shouldn't have been completed considering the defensive coverage surrounding him. Yet Williams tracked the football, secured it, and finished the play. That moment becomes even more encouraging when when considering one area Williams has openly worked to improve. Tracking the football consistently has been discussed as something he focused on throughout the offseason, and this early practice offered a glimpse that those efforts may already be paying off. Making an extremely difficult catch against tight coverage is exactly the type of development Lions fans have been hoping to see. The coverage itself deserves mentioning because Williams wasn't running free. Defenders Ennis Rakestraw and Chuck Clark were involved on the play, yet Williams still managed to come down with the football. It became one of the biggest highlights from the day's practice, and another reminder of the explosive ability he can bring whenever the ball is in the air. With Gibbs waiting for his contract, unexpected battles emerging along the offensive line, surprise roster developments involving Giovanni Manu, and Jameson Williams making highlight reel plays during practice, training camp is already giving Lions fans plenty to watch closely. But after everything that unfolded during this first session, which storyline has your attention the most? The encouraging developments didn't stop with Jameson Williams. Another player quietly putting together an impressive start to camp is cornerback Nick Whiteside, a name that wasn't generating much attention before practices began, but suddenly has people taking notice. During the session, Whiteside consistently found himself around the football, making multiple impact plays that immediately stood out. He broke up passes during scramble drills, knocked away throws intended for Jackson Meeks, disrupted another pass that was headed toward Miles Killebrew, and even forced a fumble by punching the football loose. For a player who saw very limited opportunities previously, this kind of performance couldn't have come at a better time. What makes this development especially important is Detroit's need for unexpected contributors to emerge during training camp. Every successful NFL season includes players who come from seemingly nowhere to earn meaningful roles, and Whiteside is giving himself that opportunity. The Lions don't necessarily need him to become an instant star overnight, but they certainly need reliable depth at cornerback, and early signs suggest he may be capable of providing exactly that. The coaching staff now has another defensive back making a legitimate case for increased opportunities. It's only one practice without pads, so nobody should overreact, but these are precisely the types of performances that coaches remember. Every positive rep matters when roster spots are still being decided, and Whiteside certainly made his presence felt. The linebacker group looked exactly as many expected. Jack Campbell, Malcolm Rodriguez, and Derek Barnes opened as the starting trio, giving Detroit a familiar combination in the middle of the defense. There were no major surprises there, although it's worth keeping an eye on how the rotation evolves as camp progresses. Additional competition and player rotations are likely as practices become more physical, but for now, the expected group remains firmly in place. Another interesting observation came in the secondary. Raekwon O'Neal received first-team repetitions, while veteran Rock Ya-Sin rotated throughout practice. O'Neal didn't finish the day with an interception or an official pass breakup, but the coaching staff's decision to give him meaningful first-team work says plenty about what this period of camp is designed to accomplish. Training camp isn't only about preparing established veterans, it's also about evaluating younger players in competitive situations and determining who deserves larger opportunities. Giving O'Neal quality repetitions against Detroit's talented group of receivers allows coaches to collect valuable information before preseason games even begin. Speaking of the secondary, there was another encouraging update involving DJ Reed. Throughout offseason activities, including OTAs and minicamp, Reed appeared healthy, and that trend continued during this practice. He looked fluid moving around the field, showing no obvious signs that would raise concerns about his physical condition. For a defense hoping to take another step forward, having Reed available and moving comfortably is an important development. Health is always one of the biggest storylines during training camp, and seeing key veterans participate without limitations is exactly what coaches want before the intensity increases. Elsewhere during practice, Sewanee Vakalahi stayed active throughout the session and handled a significant workload. Every additional repetition matters for players trying to establish themselves, especially this early in camp when evaluations are just beginning. Offensively, another noticeable element was the amount of 12 personnel being used. Detroit frequently lined up with 2 tight ends on the field, something that fits perfectly with the physical identity this offense wants to maintain. Heavy formations continue to be a major part of the Lions' philosophy because they create advantages in short yardage situations while also opening opportunities in the passing game. Building around physical football has become one of Detroit's trademarks, and these early practices suggest that identity isn't changing anytime soon. Special teams also produced a positive storyline. Greg Dortch looked extremely comfortable as a punt returner, adding another strong performance to his growing case for a significant role on the roster. Beyond his return ability, his place within the receiving group also appears increasingly clear. Based on what what unfolded during practice, the wide receiver hierarchy looks well established. Amon-Ra St. Brown continues to lead the group. Jameson Williams remains one of the offense's biggest playmakers. Isaac Taslea holds his position among the primary targets, and Greg Dortch appears firmly positioned as the fourth receiver. That's a group that offers reliability, explosiveness, versatility, and special teams value all at once. When looking at the entire day as a whole, the positives clearly outweighed the negatives. Yes, Giovanni Manu's unexpected placement on the non-football injury list was disappointing for him personally, especially considering the difficult competition he already faced. But outside of that situation, the Lions came away with several encouraging developments.